Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for August 20th, 2021. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also at the meeting are Aaron McHale, Clayton, Offer Shal, Paolo Enrique Cota Starling, Ravi Shankar, and Thomas Howell. So good-sized group today. And as usual, a good mix of front and back end developers. Maybe no designers today, and site builders, and also a good mix of native English speakers and those for whom English is a second or third language. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to be on vacation next week, but Aaron has offered to moderate the meeting, so it'll still go on. And I may not get the recordings done for today's meeting and next week's meeting until I get back from vacation. We'll see. So Aaron suggested that we look at this issue 3199972, update help text on account cancellation screen. And I think this is an issue we've talked about before, right?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Benji. So we looked at this a couple times and we made some really great recommendations. If you just want to scroll down just slightly more there, Benji, to the current UI screenshot and then the suggested one, there we go. So we made some great recommendations here. One thing that was pointed out in Slack while this week was that there's, and the reason I thought it would be worthwhile bringing it back just to get a quick views on this is that we use the word cancel for both the literal cancel button, which is the opposite of the confirm button, but also to still indicate that we are like canceling the user account. It was pointed out that that could potentially be a source of confusion, especially if you're not like a native. I would imagine it more so if you're not a native English speaker. So it was really just to get some views on that and see if there's a better word we could use probably for the cancel button, which is the button that means basically abort this, whereas the confirm button means, continue with the selection here. So, or if we want to basically remove the term cancel from the title, because we did a bit of work, we discussed this some meetings back around removing removing the word cancel. You'll see there's a number of, in the current UI, there's a number of situations where the word cancel or cancellation or cancelling is used. So we did some work there to try and swap that out to avoid the confusion. So I think it just looks like we're tying that up here. So yeah, I'll open it up to anybody who's got any views or points on this.
Right, so the current has the two buttons are cancel account and cancel, which we've improved to confirm and cancel. And I guess question is we're still talking about canceling the user account in this heading, and then keep on the bush.
Yeah.
And then we have account cancellation down here.
So did they actually incorporate any of the recommendations, or did they just not update this image?
Yeah, so the suggested UI is based on our latest recommendations, and those were incorporated into the patch. We didn't we obviously didn't make a recommendation about changing the cancel button text to something else, and that was raised after we had effectively signed off on this.
Okay, but I'm seeing I thought we had gotten it down to the point where we only had cancel once, but so
it might be, maybe we did make a recommendation about the help text. I'd have to go and double check that.
So I can scroll down and look at that in a minute, but first I want to suggest that the cancel button is an established pattern, and I'm reluctant to change that. And my first thought is that I see delete in these radio buttons, so why not just make it delete in the header text? But the problem is that there are different options here, and you can either disable or delete. And for the header text, you want something that includes both of those options. So you can't use either one of them in the header text.
And
Go ahead.
if you use the cancel button, you can't that you can't confirm, cancel, and cancel. Like that continues to be an extremely confusing pattern.
You're
That was one
saying
of the
that having the heading say cancel.
cancel, and it sounds like confirm, cancel, and cancel, cancel. It's just it ended up being very confusing to me when I read that.
Okay, so let me scroll down
Yeah.
and see what our recommendation was. Let's see, here's a comment from me, but
I think we did look at this multiple times, so there might be multiple review comments on it.
this was back in March.
Yeah, as you can see, we did a bit of issue consolidation, bringing some disparate issues together into this one before we kind of looked at it as a whole.
Okay, so I'm reading your comment from March 13th.
Yeah, so there was a bit of back and forward on what the correct spelling to use in this case would be, because apparently it's not clear. The word cancellation has never, it seems there's a bit of a debate as to which is the American spelling and which is the the sort of
The number of L's.
British rest of the world spelling. I don't know if that's accurate or not to say, but I'm trying to find a way to not offend someone when I say that.
So I don't see where we made any requests for changes after that comment. So in comment number 33,
Yeah,
we
maybe
signed
that
off on
is.
it. So
There might be above that actually. If you, we might have done some other ones because it looks like those were. Yeah, I think there might have been earlier reviews.
Question of what the user sees when canceling their own account came up. Please post a screenshot.
Oh, there's
So
another one.
earlier in March, comment number 11 were the recommendations. Change the text when canceling the account to select method 2. And I'm going to duplicate this tab so that I don't have to keep scrolling. I can switch between tabs instead. So change the text when canceling account to select method 2. This then leads the user into the 4 options. So it looks as though they did not follow that recommendation.
I think that
yes, they
there,
did.
yeah.
Select method 2. So they did make that change. But it's this
If we didn't comment on that message, then ignore me. I thought we talked about that, but maybe we didn't.
The second bullet point, remove to cancel account from require email confirmation, et cetera, et cetera. So it would simply read require email configuration. And that was a typo. It meant require email confirmation, not configuration.
One of my famous typos.
So it looks like they did make that change. Completely remove the line of text, select method to cancel the account above, which sits above the action buttons, as this is now redundant. Select method. Yeah, so this line has been removed. They did that. Change the label of the cancel account button to simply confirm. Yes, yes, yes. So they did all of that. Overall agreement that these would make it much clearer. An idea was raised to have the label, the primary action button, but that, if we do that, it would be in a follow-up issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure that ever got filed. I completely forgot about that actually.
But it sounds like we've decided we didn't want to change that after all because of the established pattern. You said in a later comment. And,
Oh, maybe okay. Yeah.
so I think we backed out of wanting to change this. And
Okay.
honestly, like they've done everything else and this looks clean and it's better than what we have, rather than
Yep.
send this back for additional work. Unless anyone else agrees with me, I'll retract my concern. It just looks weird. I just looks weird. That's it. It's not big.
So I guess that brings us back to is the fact that because I kind of agree with what was said earlier. If we can find a different wording for the title, then that sort of reduces or removes the confusion around the cancel button.
The only thing that comes to mind is to say disable or delete instead of cancel.
Right, but I suggested earlier that those are two different options. The first two radio buttons disable and the third and fourth delete.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's as good as it can be given the scenario with what they've done. Has it well, so I guess I agree with Thomas that I think this is a big improvement, and for this specific way of improving it, I can't think of a better way. But so I guess there's that piece. But have people brought up this general pattern of lumping the disabling and deleting under this term canceling? Because I've always found that confusing and would think it would be more helpful to have each of those as their own discrete workflows. But I know that's kind of bringing up a different issue that probably brings up more work under the hood.
So the interesting thing is, like the interesting thing about disable is here, it's kind of a combination of steps you can achieve without going to this screen. So for instance, for the first one, disable the account and keep its content. Well, you can do that. There is an option, but we just call it active or blocked. So on the user edit form, you'll see the two radio buttons, you'll see active and blocked. So that achieves the first one. And the second disable option, disable the account and unpublish its content. Well, you can do that, but then you can also go to the content overview and you can filter the content by that user and then bulk unpublish it. So this is kind of like almost like shortcuts to those. I guess actually for the first option is technically a longer way because you were already at the account edit form when you got to the cancellation screen. But the only two that are really the permanent ones are the delete options. So yeah, I see the Benji's got that there.
So maybe the issue is that we're hung up on cancel and what cancel means and disable and delete, and instead we should do something along the lines of like, how do you want to change or bulk alter user one? Because really what that is it's not part of the problem is it's not canceling an account. Like, what does cancel an account even mean within Drupal? And so maybe that's why for me that gets confused with the button that says cancel on it, because you're confirming a cancellation or canceling a cancel and moving away from a term that doesn't have any other meaning out of this context to something that may have more specific meaning might be a better approach.
So I think the term cancel account, you do see it, but it's usually as part of a workflow, like cancel account and then you wait 30 days and then the account's deleted kind of thing. And that's quite a common pattern. Sometimes they also just use delete account. Some services might use close account. And I wonder if, I mean, close doesn't seem any better than cancel, to be fair, but I kind of see what you're saying there as well.
I would like close better than cancel, just because then it doesn't confuse itself with the button below. Because again, when I see cancel, the first thing I want to do is, oh, the instructions are to cancel, press the cancel button, because that's the thing that matches. Just having a different verb would help me.
So, and I can see we see on Benji's screen here, he's got the account edit and that the one I referenced earlier, the status field there where you can block the account or activate the account. It's interesting there. Yeah, we used block as a term on this screen, but disable on the account cancellation screen.
Yeah, that is also confusing.
Maybe that block should be changed to disable on here. It seems like a friendlier word than block.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a separate issue, I guess.
Yeah, but this is kind of uncovering the entire workflow, around account management. Yeah, and I think Thomas, you kind of hit upon what I was saying, but more eloquently, of just, I think disable and delete are two very understandable terms when it comes to account management. And for me, cancel has always been a little confusing. And there's also, I just feel like the scenarios are fairly different to remove an account entirely, deleting it, as opposed to disabling. And so that's why it's always seemed a little odd to me that there's a bit of this grouping of the two into one flow. Yeah.
Right. So I was just, I spun up this fresh site, and let's just check. So as you say, this cancel link is going to give those two options to either, oh, this is exactly the page we're discussing in the issue. And the other place is in the bulk operations. I think someone brought this up, but I wanted to actually show it rather than just talk about it. We have one option in this drop down to cancel the selected user counts. And I think Hugh Clayton suggested that maybe we should have two separate things, delete or disable.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you do have an option for blocking, disabling, and then one for canceling, which would lead you to either blocking or deleting. So
right.
Just having a block and a delete, like two different actions, would make sense.
Is that the act? Does that, when we click apply that, does that take us over to that other form? What happens when we cancel? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same form. It's sort of the bulk actions version.
Right. So that means that we have the same text is in two different places. It says when canceling. So maybe that's why that language said what it did. Because if this is a different form, it's using the old language. It's all the old stuff, isn't it?
That's something we should check.
Yeah, so there is so I think generally speaking, there is a distinction in the entity API, at least between deleting an individual entity, and like there's a bulk delete paradigm, I guess you could say, which is there's a support for. So I think this is, it's not coming from the entity API as such because it's very user specific, but you'll find this kind of pattern in other than just users, where you have like a delete individual, but also then this delete multiple, as it's called under the hood, so to speak.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, do we have the same text? The same, is this the same form, or is this a different form with the same text? So when we change the text in the other location, are we also changing it here? Is this a reuse?
Now, if you give me a minute, I think I can apply the patch.
Yep. Just while Benji's getting the patch, I think I'm starting to like the idea of using the word close to replace the word cancel or cancellation. I think it feels like a well understood term and helps to keep that distinction when you're on the form.
Oh, the patch didn't apply. Why not?
Yeah, I also like close. I think that there's still those other larger issues, but for now, I think that would resolve the cancel confusion that's coming up.
Yeah. And would we want to keep so you'll see the other instance of cancel, or the word cancellation there in that help text. When enabled, the user must confirm the account cancellation via email. We could use closure instead of cancellation there.
Yeah, that seems logical to me. I'm curious what others think, like Ravi and Paolo and Ofer.
Sorry, was looking for the unmute button. Yeah, I like the last suggestion. Obviously, the cancel is super confusing.
Okay, so you think close is a clear term for when you want to disable or delete account, like close is a good term to group those together rather than cancel, which could be confusing as we're seeing here. Yeah.
Right, and it works well when we say cancel closing the account.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, Aaron, an established pattern for telcos, credit card companies. Like you
right,
when you cancel your credit card, they actually tell you you're closing your account because the information
yeah.
is typically retained.
So we got a comment in the chat from Paulo saying, I think close is a good word. So I think Benji is still trying to apply a patch. So we'll see if he gets that. But it seems like we have some sort of consensus here.
Quick, someone write a patch with close in it before he can apply this one.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to apply the patch to my local copy.
Do you want me to try to apply a patch?
Yeah, please.
It takes 5 seconds. So, do I have the node in the chat? So I can get there quickly.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Remember half an hour ago when I said, "Oh, this will be quick." Famous last words.
Okay,
This is sort
and
of
I'm
the Nate and
applying
Nate.
which patch should we test it with? Number 43?
43.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that
I suppose
that's the latest one, isn't it?
That's
Yeah, because
what it looked
there's
like.
no merge request yet, so that's fine. Yeah. I was just wondering if there was a merge request. Maybe that was why the patch is failing. But it looks like it's also targeted on 9.2, so I don't know if that's why. Maybe it needs a reroll for 9.3.
I think it does need a reroll for 9.3.
I
Yeah.
can run here both. So I'm
Great.
using magic of Drupal and that's why I can do multiple and it's nothing to do with my computer. So it's now generating them. It'll be ready in a minute.
And one thing,
In
just
theory,
for
we should be able to use Tugboat, but I don't see the link. Oh, because there's no merge request. It's just a patch.
yeah, one thing that while we get that set up, you might want to just for I don't know what's the word I'm looking for completeness. Benji, if you scroll down to comment 18, there's screenshots of what the user facing interface is, because this is actually the same form. It just has some conditions for when it's the user's the user is canceling their own account. So in these screenshots, for instance, we would be changing the word cancel to close or cancellation to closure. And I think that still works as well. Yeah, they're a bit small, aren't they? Yeah, so to me, it seems like, are you sure you want to close your account would be, to me at least, like that works fine. As we kind of said, people are used to that pattern with their banks or credit cards or.
So let's see. I have not been taking notes, but I think one thing is if cancellation is still there anywhere, it should be the American spelling.
Yeah,
And
so
then we're
I'd
talking
suggest that
about,
we maybe substitute that to closure. So like, for
right.
instance, in the help text.
So then we wouldn't have to worry about it at all. And then the other thing I don't want to lose track of is that they should make sure that it does work for the bulk delete form as well as
Yeah, I have
the single delete form, which it might happen automatically depending on how they structured it, but if not, then it might need a further change.
Yeah, my gut feeling is that's the same form.
The choice that you selected just before you got to this form, Benji,
Yes.
I think that means we have to open up a new issue possibly, because if you would back arrow.
Oh, I'm afraid that'll break. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sort of broke the site while trying to apply the patch and switching. Yeah.
Got it. In any case, we had that drop down choice that said cancel an account. I think that's another place that would have to be changed as well if we're looking at changing away from cancel to language about closing. I don't think that's a deal breaker.
I'm beginning to think that close should be a follow-up issue.
Okay.
For one thing, I think it's sort of touching enough places that it requires its own discussion. And let's make some progress. Let's improve it, and then we can make further improvement in the follow-up issue. And I see offer is just pasted
Yeah, I
the
would
link in the chat.
I noticed that the URL says canceling it, so I think yeah, let's put it to a follow up because I would want to have that URL updated as well, and we have a we probably would then want to do that with on Drupal 10 because that would be considered a backwards compatibility break, as was established in another issue that we looked at recently around the moving the node add forms, where we're having to postpone actually changing the URLs to Drupal 10 so that it's not a backwards compatibility break. So yeah, if we could, we probably would, I would say, yeah, if we get that all in the closure, cancel to closure change, if we do that all in one issue, and we can do that as a, well, in probably for Drupal 10, I would think.
It'll make it easier from a documentation perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It
I
means
love the
that
recommendation to make your password different from your username.
please don't use password 123.
No, we all know what password you used.
You're still in the add form.
Yes, so I want to go back to add user. And so
Yep.
we have block and cancel as separate options.
Oh, what fun.
Yeah, that's what I was bringing up earlier, where
I think
Yeah.
it will just change the status of the user at the select block.
So you're saying that this label would be better change status?
Yeah, it will change the user status active to block.
Yeah, so this is like what we see on the edit form where we have the status field, and as we discussed earlier, I think it makes sense to perhaps have another follow-up issue that looks at changing the word block to disable in those places, because block, again, we're using disable some places, block in other places, and I think disable is a better word for this.
But it questions the entire pattern for why would you go with the choice or path for cancel when you get to block again? Like it's you're doing the same action from the same place with two different choices.
So offer this site has the patch applied, is that right?
Yeah, it did say that there's some issues there to apply, but then it was able to move things around, I guess, as part of the apply patch of Composer or of
Okay,
Git
yeah,
apply,
and
sorry.
This does look like the updated text. So how about the bulk form?
Oh, so this
I
doesn't even get
think
updated.
They are different, require email confirmation. So we asked them to shorten that, and they did on this form. But here it still says require email confirmation to cancel account.
Okay, so it looks like the bulk form is completely missed out then.
Yes.
Right.
Well, that's something we can address in this issue for sure then.
Right.
So
So,
just
so
be
I
copying
think the
over those
bulk form
changes.
should be addressed in this issue. And let's continue using cancellation for now, but with the American spelling, because I'm going to be a bully. And for follow-up issues, consider changing the workflow so that instead of cancel including these two sub options, we separate them, and consider changing cancel to close. And maybe if we do the first one, we don't need the second one.
yeah, that would be the case. And I guess if we're aiming for Drupal 10 with either of those two approaches, then it probably makes sense to get to a decision around the first one on whether it's better to just have two actions and not have the overall cancel/close option. Make a decision there, and then if we decide that we do want to keep this overarching close cancel pattern, then we can update it to close.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Yeah, it's probably going to want more discussion, so that sounds good.
So Aaron, can you update the issue with a comment after the meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further comments on this? I think we're
Just so I tested it on 9293. Both of them, the test file of the patch was not able to apply, but the other files were applied. So if
Okay.
you want, add that in the comment.
Yeah, so they'll definitely need a reroll. Then there's probably some tests changed in newer commits.
okay. So let me do this. This really will be quick. I just want to mention one of my pet issues. It's 3216341 to have a permissions form with just permissions for one or a few modules. And I have a little screenshot here showing permissions for content moderation and workflows. And it's been RTBC for over a month, and Lee Rowlands just looked at it within the last 24 hours and made a few more suggestions, but I think if I can update the merge request, it's likely to be committed soon. So that's when. And he had something nice to say about it. He said, "Looks great. This is a killer feature." Yeah, so I'm excited about that. But then going back to this issue, 987978. So that looks like a rather old issue from 2010. Move administrator role settings to the new role settings form has been fixed.
Yay.
And Aaron has been following this one closely.
Like a hawk.
And we did discuss this just last week, the week before. And they've added this new tab. So this used to be on a completely different page, the config user settings, and it's now a tab on the permissions page, or a tab on the people page. So Aaron, you wanted to talk about possible follow-ups?
Yes, I did. And you might need to scroll to my comment because I can't remember what it was.
I'm again going to use the trick of duplicating the tab so that I have the issue summary in one tab and I'll scroll in the other.
Yeah. Did I make a comment? I'm sure there was a comment somewhere about. Oh no, sorry. Yes, it was one of those follow-ups. Okay, yeah. So, I made a comment in Slack, didn't I? Yeah. So on the issue related to display, which oh, where'd it go? Sorry, did you change tabs?
I did.
It's yeah. So in the issue, so the first issue that DWW filed was a follow-up there, was Display which role, the administrator role on. Yeah, so that one. So basically, that one was just filed, and it was from a recommendation that was made as part of this issue to look at. And I think this one from something you said, Thomas, around the concerns of like not knowing which role is the administrator role when you just look at the roles screen. Now there was other concerns, but the next issue should fix that. So I'll just focus on the UI elements. And so it would basically
that Derek followed 2 follow-up issues. The one for 60 looks sort of back end, so that's not really appropriate for us to discuss.
yeah.
But the first one is 3229028. Display which role is the administrator role on admin people roles.
Yeah, so this was just filed, and it's something we could talk about. Obviously, there's nothing to review yet, but it's certainly we could provide some guidance as to what direction this should go in. So the idea being that, when you go to the role collection, there's no indication there which role is the administrator role, presumably, other than what the name is. But the idea is that we could provide some kind of visual indicator there, maybe a column on the role screen, maybe some kind of icon, something that would indicate which role is out of all of your roles is the administrator role. I think that's the idea with that issue. So if you go to roles there, yeah, so on this screen here. And a bit of background of that, it really came from the idea of potentially, like, we don't actually, in the user interface, we provide that drop down, but it's technically possible right now for someone to hack in more than one role being the administrator role, but there's no interface that exposes that. Now, that's more of a technical thing, which will be fixed in the other follow-up issue, so we don't necessarily need to talk about it here, but it did, as I said, it spawned this idea of, could we provide some kind of interface here on this screen that would highlight at a glance what the administrator role is.
That it won't be like a normal user.
Sorry, say again?
Is it to make it clear that it's not a normal user?
Right. So like on this screen, it's pretty clear, like you have a role that says administrator. But let's say you had a site that had lots of roles, and maybe the sort of, if you like, it had multiple like administrator roles and only one like super administrator, if you like. They might not be that, you might want to quickly identify which role is that super admin role. But unless it's been named sensibly, there's no clear guaranteed way to see at a glance which role of all of these roles is marked as an administrator role. So I guess the first thing is it even worth doing that? And the second thing is if we do that, then what does anybody have any recommendations to what that might look like?
Is it possible to delete?
Has been fixed. So this site already has the new page.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm sorry. What was that offer?
I was just asking if is it possible to delete administrator role?
Good question.
I do know there's a long-term issue to stop making user number one specifically the admin or something like that.
That's right.
But I don't know if.
Presumably,
I think I just noticed a bug in Claro. This drop down doesn't work. It will give me confirm.
I have a backup. Go. It's all good.
Well, shall I go ahead and delete it and see what happens?
Yeah. It's one click to bring it back, I hope.
Oh, well, if you're user one, then it doesn't matter then.
Wow. So that's interesting. So
what are you now?
If
you go
well,
to
I no longer have that role, I bet.
Yeah, so this this is a really interesting one because it highlights the perfect thing around user one is still a super admin regardless of what role it has. But there, as was just pointed out, there is an issue to basically remove that hard-coded behavior. So either that, I hope that issue has been, but I presume it's been well discussed enough to the point where someone has realized we should probably make it not possible to delete your only like way of having administrative privileges through the administrator role.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Clayton said a few minutes ago that he's woohoo, some nice improvements getting applied to Drupal. Very cool. And Paolo says the issue provide a module specific permissions form is a really nice feature. Thank you. Okay, so back to the question at hand. Now that we've done that little experiment, do we want to come up with a recommendation? Is this really a question for a designer? Or let's just throw out some options. The obvious option is to have an extra column with a check mark if it is an admin role, and normally there will be one and only one role with that check mark. Other suggestions?
I thought of the asterisks for mandatory fields next to the name.
Yeah, maybe with a tooltip or something when you hover over
like
it.
red and superscript or something.
So the primary concern I have with either of these approaches is that in my perfect world, when we have the kind of predictable content editor role, etc., and we want to make it like have the capacity to make it a default, something so that module developers can predict that that type of role will always exist, even if you change its name. You would have more than just admin as a choice. Like you'd be able to make you could choose a role and say this is the admin role. So you've moved it from 1 to user 50 or whatever, and you'd be able to do that for anything that is part of core. So if you have a core role that we've generated that you can change what actual role you want to name it, you have that capacity. If we don't ever foresee that as a future, then it becomes a lot less important. I just would I would have made it very simple. I just at the very top of this, above this, I would have a very simple area where it said, this is your admin. This is, it just lists it out. It's not a place to change it. It just makes it visible. And could link to the role settings tab, because role settings is where you select it. But it basically would just show it as visible at the top of this, rather than doing any weird table stuff or asterisks because it gives you more flexibility in the future for, again, coming up with additional core roles that people can change around what they want to call them, but you can predict from a machine perspective that these things exist.
Right, and I think that what you're saying there kind of aligns with our thinking around the whole idea fundamentally of the introducing the role settings tab, is that, you know, from my thinking, we could, one of the other things there is, let's say we make the anonymous role and the authenticated role kind of configurable. We can then, in addition, on this screen, we can also say, here's your authenticated role, here's your anonymous role. So we probably, whatever the pattern is, as you say, we want something that's sort of reusable, would be the right word, I guess.
Yes.
So Paolo commented that people might be confused how to edit if a new column is added. I guess I don't see why that would be a problem. We'd still have the operations column with the edit button. But I think Thomas's suggestion, you're basically saying that we add some text like the stuff that I entered here, saying something about the administrator role and providing a link to the role settings tab.
Yeah, something like that would be perfectly, because we really want people going to the role settings page. They're right next to one another and they're part of the same, I guess, URL architecture. So to me, it's about the information is already in the system, it's already there, and it's already aggregated. So you just want to make people aware of it when they're looking at the roles page, because they're going to be used to going to the roles page, and it's more about socialization, and it's less about needing to duplicate the same information in 5 places.
Okay. I want to point out we're coming up to the end of the hour. So we should try to wrap this up. I don't think we've gotten to consensus on this, which is okay. But maybe the right
Yeah.
thing to do at this point is just for anyone who has an opinion to post a comment to the issue with a possibility. We can mention that we discussed it at the meeting, and we're still just brainstorming, not making sort of official recommendations. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Reasonable.
And I'm partly wondering whether actually to postpone this issue on the technical one. There's also follow-up, because I think part of the reason for part of the idea behind this one was that you could be in an awkward position where your site has actually has more than one administrator role, but there's no way to see that in the UI. So that once that technically is fixed, so that's no longer a possibility, then I actually think the need to confirm which roles are the administrator roles is kind of slightly reduced as a matter of urgency. So maybe, I'm not saying we should, but I'm just theorizing that maybe this could be postponed until that one is done, and then we know where we stand with it.
Okay. Sounds like if the other issue is fixed, then this might be obsolete.
Possibly. I think it wouldn't hurt to then bring it back and review what we should do with it, because it might be as simple as was suggested there, where we just put a new piece of text saying go here to configure the administrator role. But maybe we should wait till the other issue is done before doing that.
Okay. So do you want to go so far as to mark it as postponed?
I'm still yeah, it was kind of just off the top of my head, so I'm not 100% sure of what if I'm fully committed to that idea yet, but if other people think it's a good idea, then maybe we should.
Okay.
Is that technical issue, is it still being kind of debated whether or not to even proceed with that technical change?
I think we recognize that it's a necessary change. It was identified through this issue as a potential security issue, so I think it was just created at the same time, so there's not enough, there's I think I was the only one to put something on it. It was just a fixing the issue summary. So yeah, it's a very new issue, but I expect that will be done.
I see. So I think if it's clear that it's going to be done, then we could still proceed with a decision based on the assumption that of like, this is what we would do once that technical fix is in place.
Okay.
All right, so the hour is up. Thank you all for joining. And again, Aaron will be running the meeting a week from today, and I'll be back in 2 weeks. So hope to see most or all of you then.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy that vacation, Benji.
Thank
you.
you.
You definitely earned it.
Thank you.
I do need a rest.
Thanks, everyone.